Hello, and welcome to another episode of the review show. Or in this case, a preview show? Whatever it is, today we are going to be discussing the TurboGrafx PC Engine Mini. So kick back, click those subscribe buttons, and let's get into this.
This is a review show. This is a review show. You don't have to like it, but I hope you like it.
The TurboGrafx-16 is a system I have some fond memories of. I never owned one, but Dick Boots and I would rent a system and a load of games whenever we could afford to in our younger years. I recall weekends of playing Splatterhouse and a few Bonk-related games and a few not-so-great titles as well. But what about this upcoming mini system? There seems to be a few misconceptions surrounding the announced game selection on this device, so I wanted to go over a few things. Mainly the 26 games on the Japanese PC Engine side of things. It would seem that many people are tossing the idea of even playing these games since they're supposedly not in English. Well, let's explore that today. Akumajo Dracula X Chi no Rondo, which translates to Demon Castle Dracula X Reincarnation of Blood, aka Castlevania Rondo of Blood. Originally developed by Konami for the PC Engine Super CD-ROM system, this is an amazing Castlevania game to come out of the 16-bit side-scrolling era. In this game, you play as Richter Belmont, and you go through 9 stages with 4 alternative routes as you search for your beloved Annette until you confront Dracula in his castle. Richter makes use of a whip as his main weapon. You can have 6 sub-weapons, such as an axe, a dagger, holy water, pocket watch, a cross, the normal Castlevania sub-weapons. Now, to me, this game is a system seller. I don't care if it's in Japanese, that's fine. And as you can see, there's plenty of English in this game, so it won't hinder your gameplay. Of course, there's other ways to play this Castlevania, such as on the recently released Castlevania Requiem, in which Rondo of Blood and Symphony of the Night are included on the PlayStation 4. And yes, that version is in English. But really, you don't need English very much for this game. Sure, you might not get all of the story, but the gameplay, the soundtrack, and the sprite work are fantastic. I highly recommend you play this game if you get the TurboGrafx-16 Mini. Here we have Aldines, the mission code for Rage Crisis. Are you ready for this? Then get try! This is a horizontal shooter, which has been developed by Produce and was released February 22nd, 1991. And this came out for the Super Graphics, but only in Japan. This game is pretty fun. It's a little difficult. As you can see, there's a lot of parallax scrolling effects, and the game looks pretty good. But if you lack the knowledge of Japanese language, I'd say that wouldn't hinder you at all to play this game. It's a horizontal shooter. What else could you want? Play it, have fun, and try to beat it. Good luck. Appear Gateball, which in my research translates something to like, aha, Gateball! Something like that. So what is Gateball anyway? Apparently, Gateball is a Japanese team sport inspired by croquet. So this game was originally developed and published by Hudson Soft, and then released for the PC Engine in 1988. Now, when I was playing this game, I did find some difficulty figuring out the mechanics of the game because of the language barrier. However, I do think that once you learn the rules of the game, just like any sport, it'll probably become universal. That being said, I didn't really think that this was that much fun as a video game. And perhaps that's why this is one of only 2 Gateball games ever made. But who knows, if you like this kind of stuff, give it a shot. You may surprise yourself. Alright, so here's Bomberman 94. This particular Bomberman was developed and published by Hudson Soft for the PC Engine and released on December 10th, 1993 in Japan. If you've ever played a Bomberman before, you pretty much understand how to play this game. But this does have a story mode, and you really don't need to speak Japanese at all to understand how to proceed through the story. Just play it like you play any other Bomberman. One thing to note, if you plan on buying the multi-tap for your PC Engine TurboGrafx Mini, this game will support up to 5 players. So that's a lot of fun, right? And like I said, I don't understand Japanese, and yet I can play this game just fine. It's a lot of fun, actually. Alright, and here we have Bomberman Panic Bomber. This 1994 puzzle game was developed and published by Hudson for the PC Engine in Super CD-ROM format. So what this is a falling blocks puzzle game, and it kind of reminds me of Puyo Puyo in where you have to match up the colors in order to clear a line. And they add bomb chains to this, which is basically the bombs drop and it causes a chain of bombs to explode. And this in turn sends rubble to your opponent's field, which is kind of similar to Tetris multiplayer. Now, one cool thing about this game is there's a story mode, and essentially there's an overworld map where you go around and you fight different characters, thereby giving you an end goal. Now, as far as if this game is hindered at all by not understanding the Japanese language, I would say no. It's a puzzle game. If you know how to play Puyo Puyo or Tetris or any of those kind of puzzle games, you can figure this out pretty easy. The only real difference here is this is a Bomberman themed game. So if you like Bomberman and you like puzzle games, give this one a shot. Sho Aniki. How I love this game. So Sho Aniki, which translates to Super Big Brother, is the first game in the Sho Aniki series. This was originally released in 1992 on the Super CD-ROM in Japan. So the Sho Aniki series is defined by its sweaty, hot muscle brothers and bodybuilders and just crazy characters. I love the sprites in this game. All the dudes in Speedos and the half-naked lady. She looks like she's wearing a clear plastic bag. It's amazing. And the music is top-notch. At its heart, Sho Aniki is a side-scrolling shooter in where you get all the power-ups and everything you normally get in shooters, but it's just accentuated by interesting graphics. Are you going to be hindered by not knowing Japanese to play this game? Hardly. No pun intended. If you can't enjoy everything I've already described, then the game is probably not for you. But really, for me, not understanding the Japanese language almost gives this more of a sense of wonder. Those of you who have watched our channel know we're big Sho Aniki fans, and I highly recommend this one. This is where the series began. So oil up your body and get to collecting that protein. Daimakamura, which translates to Great Demon World Village, also known as Ghouls and Ghosts in the United States. Everyone knows this side-scrolling platform adventure game, and if you don't, you should definitely look into it. Originally released as an arcade game in 1988, Ghouls and Ghosts is the sequel to Ghosts and Goblins, and this is a really good port of the classic game. You control Arthur, who must make his way through 6 levels, each filled with demonic and undead baddies, while collecting different weapons along the way, all while in your underwear. Well, you can collect armor and wear that too, but what fun is that? The soundtrack is rockin' and should be familiar to anyone who's played this series. While there is some Japanese language, it's not really a language barrier on this game. Sure, you can't read the ending words of bravery, but they did include congratulation for you sentimental types. This port is one of only 5 games released for the TurboGrafx, and definitely a worthy entry to have on the Mini. So, those first 7 games are off to a pretty good start. A couple bumps in the road, but nothing you can't get past with a little openness. We're going in alphabetical order on this list of games, and next up would be Dungeon Explorer. But since there will be a localized version of that on the English side, we can skip that one here. This brings us to the next contender. Fantasy Zone is an arcade classic, developed by Sega and released in 1985. This thing has been ported to a ton of consoles. It's had plenty sequels too. This is a side-scrolling shooter, or in this case, some would call this a cute-em-up, due to its cute-looking nature and bright colors. To be honest, I'm not all that familiar with this game. I've played it a handful of times and it seems okay. I probably should spend a little more time with it. That being said, this entire game appears to be in English, so you should have no problem understanding anything about it if this is your native language. Ginga Fuke Densetsu Sapphire. This one translates to Galaxy Policewoman Legend Sapphire, though most people just abbreviate the title to Sapphire in English. This is another title released in Japan exclusively for the CD-ROM system. Developed by CA Production and published by Hudson Soft in 1995. The story is you are part of an elite force of policewomen and must travel through time and space to stop the bad guys from committing crimes in the past and the future. You get to select from one of 4 ladies on this vertical shooter adventure. This is one of those games that came out at the end of the system's lifespan, so it's very rare and it sells for quite a high price tag. I mean, there are even counterfeit versions floating around trying to get in on that retro pie. Anyway, if you base things on price alone, this would be worth the system. However, it turns out this game is a ton of fun! Not only does it control well, but the stages, the bosses, the music, the graphics are all top quality. You will find some language barriers here, but not enough to spoil any fun you'll have playing the actual game. You will miss out on some of the story, but it's easy enough to stumble through it, and 100% worth it too. Gradius was first released as an arcade in 1995 by Konami. The first game in the Gradius series is a horizontal space shooter, in which the Vic Viper makes its way through various alien enemies. I'm not so sure this opening music goes with the scene of lasers blasting between two warring ships in space. I mean, it's so friggin' happy. Anyway, one of the interesting mechanics of this game is the use of the meter to decide which power-ups you want to install. Installing the power-ups depends on the number of capsules you've collected. The meter below will highlight each ability, and when you collect the right amount of capsules for the one you want, you pull the trigger. Some of you are familiar with this game may also know it as Nemesis. As far as any English needed for it, it would appear that the bulk of the game is in English. Though I haven't beat this one yet to see the end screen, but I assume if you enjoy this type of game, you'll have fun regardless. Gratis II is a horizontal shooter developed by Konami for arcades in Japan. This is a 1992 port to the PC Engine Super CD-ROM, which is a sequel to the original Gradius, as well as its spin-off Salamander, which we will get to later on, so stay tuned. The game is pretty much the same as the first one, but now you have multiple weapon configurations as well as a boss rush mode. Again, you don't need to know Japanese at all to enjoy this game. All of the important stuff is in English, so just hop in the cockpit of the Vic Viper and take down the Bacterian Empire. Joseiken Necromancer, which roughly translates to Evil Holy Sword Necromancer, but commonly just known as Necromancer. Developed and published by Hudson Soft in 1988, this was the first JRPG available for the system. A lot of people think this one plays like the Dragon Warrior games, but personally, I see a bit more Phantasy Star in it. Unfortunately, this one has never had an official English translation, and since these games are fairly story-driven, you probably won't get much out of this one if you don't understand it. It's too bad, because from what I played of this game, it's a lot of fun, and the art style is awesome. The game has a total H.R. Giger horror vibe, which is probably why they used his art for the cover of the game. I mean, look at these awesome sprites, all bloody and gory and stuff. Anyway, while playing this game for the purpose of review, I went way longer than I should have, and played it for a few hours. If you like this style of RPG, and don't care about the story, then maybe you'll have fun with it too. The Kung Fu. Known as the China Warrior in the US, this is a side-scrolling beat-em-up made by Hudson Soft in 1987. You are Wang, a master of Kung Fu, and here you punch, kick, and jump kick your way through 4 levels. At the end of each level, you get to take down an enemy boss. This game is known for its very large sprites, which are cool, but on the other side of the coin, it's also known for its limiting controls. It's not hard to control per se, it's just kinda meh. However, if you're worried about being limited because you don't understand the language, don't be. The title screen is going to be your main barrier here. The gameplay itself is something that anyone who has some time and patience can do. So there was one game in there that might be pretty tough to play without localization. But 1 out of 14 is not bad. We're also starting to see a few shooters, and if you stick around, you'll find that could be a trend on this system. We're going to pass by Military Madness and Utopia 1 and 2, due to those being on the English side as well. But up next, we have a really fun one for you. Ninjaroo Kendon, which we know in the States as Ninja Gaiden, Gaiden meaning side story, is a game that should need no introduction. I've played this game a million times on the NES. If you haven't done this too, I suggest you stop the video now and rush out to play it. Yeah, it's frustrating and can be difficult at first, but it's well worth the challenge. Maybe that's just nostalgia talking, but if so, it speaks for a lot of people. I still see this game being played all the time across the internet. This version, however, is a little different, but not really by much. Here we have what is essentially the same game you have on the NES, but with a fresh coat of paint. Some odd decisions went into that painting though, like these weird scrolling backgrounds. It's more of an eye strain than eye candy. The cutscenes look pretty good, and it's kind of neat to see them from a different point of view than the NES version. The controls are just a hair looser than the NES version, but all it takes is a good 10 minutes of playing before you get used to them. Now you may be thinking you'd love to play this game, but the cutscenes being in Japanese is a deal breaker. Well, have no such reservation, because this game was fully translated, and all you have to do to switch to the English version is hold button 2 and 1 and press select on the title screen. Poof! English translation initiated. Now go avenge your pops. PC Genjin is an obvious clever play on words to sound like PC Engine. I love it, and I love this game. Some of you may know this one as Bonk's Adventure, and it's a must-play. The English side of the TurboGrafx Mini includes the sequel to this game called Bonk's Revenge. But here we get the welcome edition of the original game as well. Here you play as Bonk, a cave boy whose mission is to rescue Princess Za. I don't know why, but the late 80s and early 90s were filled with caveman-themed games. Anyway, pretty standard fare here. Bonk can attack by bonking his head onto enemies, as well as jumping and landing on them with his head. He also climbs walls with his teeth. His dentist loves this feature. Oh yeah, you also get meat sticks, which drives Bonk crazy, making him invincible for a time. During this invincibility madness, he can also ground pound and turn his enemies into stone. As far as English is concerned, while there is a little Japanese in this version, such as the beginning of the stage signs, your fun will not be hindered in the least. If you get the system, play this game. Salamander, which was retitled Life Force, or if you're in Europe, titled Life Force Salamander, is a horizontal and vertical shooter. Yes, this game goes both ways! I like this, as it adds a bit of variety. This is a spin-off of Gradius, where you can play two players at the same time. Once again, some people may be familiar with this game because of its NES counterpart, though you notice this particular one being a bit different, as this is based off the arcade, while the NES version has some new content. Oh, and no Konami code on this one. You're just gonna have to get good if you want to beat it. Just like the other games in this series, you should have no problem understanding what's going on here. This is Snatcher. Snatcher has been described as a cyberpunk graphic adventure game. Fans of the game designer Hideo Kojima should know and want to play this one. It loosely ties into his Metal Gear series as well. This game was developed and published by Konami and released in 1992 for the PC Engine Super CD-ROM system. Now this one may be the most disappointing game on the system for those who don't understand Japanese, as you pretty much need to know the language to get through the story. It's too bad really, because the PC Engine version is the only version of this game which is uncensored. It has a bit of everything: drugs, sex, gore, drama, and a good dose of humor. It's a great game. I wish you would have the chance to appreciate it fully here. But unfortunately, this game has never been translated to English. Except on the Sega CD, but that's a different story. Starro Deer is a vertical scrolling shooter published by Hudson Soft for the PC Engine CD-ROM Squared in 1992. This is a parody of the Star Soldier series, and it does a pretty good job at it. It plays a lot like Star Soldier games, but instead of the cold atmosphere of space, we have bright and colorful enemies and backgrounds. In this game, you can be the standard ship, or you have your choice between Bomberman or a sentient PC Engine, complete with Who card power-ups and spinning PC Engine controller shields. It's actually pretty fun to witness. Bomberman throws bombs and balloons for some reason, but I don't really care why, because this game is wacky and fun. Now, apparently this game was localized for North America and called Phantasy Star Soldier. However, this version never came out, which is okay, because it seems all they did was change the title screen and remove all of the cutscenes and voice acting. So obviously you won't understand what's going on in these cutscenes, but they are quite fun to watch, as they look fun and you kind of get the drift of what's going on anyway. I had a lot of fun with this one, and plan to play through it again when the mini is released. Super Darius is a 1990 port of Darius and released on the PC Engine CD-ROM by Bits Laboratory. This side-scroller shooter is tough as nails. Part of its fun is its branching paths, which always splits off into two ways. But I can't show you this here. For some reason, I just couldn't get this game into my sights and past the first level. Maybe I'll give it another go when the mini arrives. One thing I read, which is interesting, is the way this game made use of CD audio. Instead of having the system do the work, they made a recording of the chiptune music from the arcade PCB and then converted it to Redbook audio. I find that way cool. Anyway, as far as if you can play this one without understanding Japanese, of course you can. It's a shooter. I think you should be able to understand it inherently, no matter where you are from. So boot up and enjoy. Super Momotaro Dentists 2. From what I understand, this is a popular series in Japan, which plays a lot like Monopoly. It's a board game essentially. The language barrier made it pretty hard to tell what's going on here. I see that there are dice, and you roll them and can move the rolled amount of spaces. Beyond that, I'm at a loss for what to do. Maybe some more time spent on this would yield more fun, but for now, I'd say this one is going to prove a bit harder to get into without knowing the language. Super Star Soldier is another shooter developed by Hudson and released in 1991. So there's a bunch of text at the beginning which I have no idea what it says, but we have some pictures to give us some kind of idea. Really, none of that is important once you start blasting enemies. This game is 8 levels long and includes a variety of weapons like flamethrowers, electricity, spread guns, and heat-seeking missiles. I'm not really the biggest fan of shooters. I like them alright, and I wouldn't turn one down when given the chance to play. They just aren't my favorite genre. However, I found myself playing this one for quite some time. It's actually a lot of fun. The graphics are nice and the music is decent. Personally, I think it's a good addition to have on this system and worth giving a shot. Tokimeki Memorial, which translates roughly to Heartbeat Memorial. This is a dating sim video game developed and published by Konami for the PC Engine Super CD-ROM in 1994. Koji Igarashi of Castlevania and Bloodstained fame was a writer on the game. I really don't know what to say about this one. It's a nice looking game with huge sprites and animations. However, I have no idea what's going on in the game. It's very much infused with Japanese language and I can barely make it through the menus, much less enjoy playing the game. I'm sure this is probably fun for some people, but if you don't understand the language, there's a definite barrier to the game. Alright, well that pretty much covers all the games on the PC Engine side of the system, with the exception of Ys 1 and 2, which you're getting a localized version on the TurboGrafx side anyway. So what are your thoughts on this mini-system being released by Konami? Did this video help you make a decision on whether you want to buy this or not? I'm really curious to hear any thoughts you have on this device, so please, let's hear what you have to say in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon!